Hello students, last time we have seen the anatomy of the radius. Now in detail with the clinical anatomy. So the bones of the forearm, one of the important and stabilizing bone of the forearm is ulna. This is ulna and the lateral bone is the radius. So this is the superior radioulnar joint and this one is the inferior radioulnar joint. So we have already seen the clinical anatomy, but generally in the clinical anatomical point of view is that if there is a strong contusion or strong force is there, both the bones, shaft of both the bones, radius and ulna gets fractured many times, and in the clinical anatomy of this we have seen there is a malunion. One of these fragment of a radius either or ulna either may get union or attached with the wrong bone, that is radius gets, one of the fragment of the radius gets attached in the to the ulna. Now first of all we will see the anatomy of the ulna. This is the medial bone of the forearm. You see from the, this is a frontal view of the ulna, frontal view of the ulna. Then this one is the lateral aspect of the ulna, this one is the medial aspect, and you see the posterior aspect of the ulna. This one is the, unfortunately the styloid process of the ulna is broken here. This is the styloid process of the ulna. You can easily identify on the surface of your wrist. This is the styloid process of the ulna. Then this one is the olecranon. If you bend your elbow, you will get the ulna. This is the olecranon process of the ulna. You can easily palpate. It is subcutaneous. Not even that. If you move your finger from the styloid process of the ulna till to the olecranon process, the posterior border, whole of the posterior border of the ulna is subcutaneous. There are no muscles in the posterior border of the ulna. Ulna consists of the posterior border which starts from the triangular area behind the olecranon process and it runs downward till to the head. And one thing keep in mind, the head of the ulna is downward. Generally head is above, but this is the only bone that it has a head which is directed downward. It is to the posterior aspect, it is to the lower side of the bone. So lower end consists of the head of the ulna. Now this is the medial bone. The bone gets articulated Now this bone should be studied along with the radius, that will be better, and even the radiology should be studied because both the bones are in contact with each other and they are the bones of the forearm. So togetherly they should be studied. So deliberately I have shown you the articulations of the radius and ulna downward. So first of all, the joints made by the ulna. This olecranon process is beak-like, and it articulates it fits into the trochlea of the humerus to form the elbow joint. And during act of the supination and pronation, ulna remains as it. So that is a stable bone. It do not move. The radius moves around the ulna during the supination and pronation. Now, this bone makes, first of all, it makes the elbow joint. Secondly, it makes articulation with the head of the radius to form the superior radioulnar joint. Inferiorly, the head of the ulna articulates with the ulnar notch at the lower end of the radius to form the inferior radioulnar joint. These are the three main joints formed by the ulna. In addition to this, the interosseous border of the radius articulates with the interosseous border of the ulna to form the interosseous. Although the direct bone to bone is not there, they are connected to each other by interosseous membrane in between the ulna and radius. So these are the joints formed by the Ulna. Ulna is the medial bone of the forearm. Now the features. The bone consists of the upper end, shaft and lower end. Upper end. The upper end consists of two processes. First of all, the olecranon process. This one you see from all directions. The olecranon process posteriorly, olecranon process anteriorly to the medial aspect and to the lateral aspect. Olecranon process, it is like a beak like. So it bears 5 surfaces. Superior surface, anterior. This one is a trochlear notch for articulation with the pulley shaped trochlea. Upper half this olecranon process makes the anterior surface of the olecranon process. Superior surface, anterior surface, then lateral surface, then medial surface and posterior surface. This is the posterior surface. So this olecranon process bears or have 5 surfaces. Anterior surface, which makes upper half of the trochlear notch. This is whole of this is called as a trochlear notch. Superior surface, this is superior surface, anterior surface, lateral surface, medial surface and posterior surface. Posterior surface, superior surface continues downward as a posterior surface, which is triangular in shape. This superior surface is triangular in shape. See here, triangular, which gives the insertion of the anconis is there. Muscle anconis gets inserted there. So this olecranon process bears 5 surfaces: superior surface, anterior surface, lateral surface, medial surface and posterior surface. Now the second process is a coronoid process. This one is a coronoid process. It is also beak like. You can see from all directions it is a beak like process, and it bears 5 surfaces: the superior surface, anterior surface, lateral surface and medial surface. I again revise. The beak like process is called as a coronoid process. The superior surface, anterior surface, or you may say anterior inferior surface, then the lateral surface and medial surface. You observe the coronoid process. It is beak like, directed forward, and the lower half of the trochlear notch makes the superior surface of the coronoid process. Then the laterally there is a notch for articulation of the head of the radius. At the anterior aspect of the head there is a belt like annular ligament that articulates anteriorly and to the posteriorly, that binds the head of the radius, that we have seen last time. The subluxation of the radius comes out, especially in the children. When you pick up the hand of the child suddenly, and the dislocation of the head from the annular ligament is called as a subluxation. So that annular ligament anteriorly and posteriorly attached, it is like a belt here to the radial notch. This is radial notch. This one is a medial surface. This is a lateral surface. Superior surface are anterior inferior surface. This anterior inferior surface will show, you will get one tubercle there. This is the tubercle of the ulna. This is tuberosity, ulnar tuberosity. It is just on the anterior inferior surface of the ulna. Okay. Now this is olecranon process and this is coronoid process, and it has 5 surfaces. This one has 4 surfaces, and this is a radial notch. Okay. Now this is a trochlear notch. This is a trochlear notch for articulation with the trochlea. That's why that is called as a trochlear notch. Now we have seen the features. I can revise the features: olecranon process, coronoid process, radial notch, trochlear notch, and ulnar tuberosity. There is one tuberosity on the anterior aspect of the ulna is called as a ulnar tuberosity. Here. Okay. Now this portion from the upper end to the lower end is called as a shaft. Shaft is around in the mid of the shaft in a cross section. It is triangular, clear cut triangular. You see may observe that from all directions. This is of a right sided. At the end I will tell you how to determine the side determination at the end. There are only 3 clues to determine the side: superior, inferior, medial and anterior, posterior. Medial, lateral, anterior and posterior. Okay. Now the shaft is the portion in between the upper end and lower end. The shaft bears 3 borders and 3 surfaces. 3 borders and 3 surfaces. The borders of the first of all, the interosseous or the sharp border. This interosseous border, see this interosseous border. Interosseous border is nothing but the lateral border of the shaft of the ulna. It starts behind the at the lower aspect of the supinator crest. Supinator crest, it runs downward and it is more sharp in the mid of the shaft, and it ends at the in the head. See, this is most sharp border of the ulna. Sharp border of the ulna. Now the anterior border. Anterior border starts from the medial aspect of the coronoid process, runs downward and it is prominent in the middle part and ends it ends into the styloid process, back of the styloid process, Now the posterior border starts from the triangular area of the posterior surface of the olecranon process, and it is subcutaneous throughout the length. The posterior border is subcutaneous throughout the length and it ends into the styloid process. Okay. Now the surfaces. The surface in between the interosseous border and see, this is interosseous border, this is interosseous border, this one is the anterior border. This surface in between the interosseous border and anterior border is anterior surface. Surface in between the interosseous border and posterior border. Interosseous border and posterior border is a posterior surface. Surface in between the posterior border and anterior border is medial surface. Radius has a lateral surface to the shaft and ulna has a medial surface. I again revise: interosseous border, anterior border, posterior border. Anterior surface in between the interosseous border and anterior border, anterior surface. Surface in between the interosseous border and posterior border is the posterior surface. Surface in between the posterior border and anterior border is a medial surface. Okay, these are the these are some features of the shaft. So that posterior surface is further divided into by oblique line into medial and lateral. The posterior surface, that is not vertical ridge is there that divides the surface, and again there is one oblique line that divides the larger lateral and smaller medial surface. Oblique ridge is there. Then there is a from here is the supinator. The muscle supinator is there for the insertion of the supinator is there. So supinator crest is there, like that of a radius. Okay. Now the lower end bears 2 processes. One is the head and styloid process. The head, see, you can see the styloid process of your one ulna. Styloid process is posteriorly and inferiorly. And to the lateral side there is head. Head of the ulna is below. head of the ulna is below, not above. So in between the head and styloid process there is one groove. There is a groove. That groove, through that groove, it permits for the passage of the tendon of the extensor carpi ulnaris passes through that groove. So head, styloid process, olecranon process, coronoid process, radial notch. Head articulates with the ulnar notch of the radius to form the inferior radio-ulnar joint. Then this is interosseous border, posterior border, then anterior surface, posterior surface and medial surface. You revise the bone. Then how to determine the site? Site determination of the ulna. The ulnar notch is above. First of all, how to determine the site? Expanded upper end is above. How to determine lateral and medial? Laterally there is a radial notch, and medially and downward there is a styloid process. Again, to determine the medial and lateral, you must use the head. Head is medially. Head is laterally, and styloid process is medially and downward. Then interosseous border is to the lateral side. Ulnar notch, radial notch is to the lateral side. Anteriorly there is a trochlear notch. The coronoid process is directed forward. Then olecranon process is also directed forward. So these are the important features and clue to determine the side. Clue to determine the side of the bone. How to determine the side of the bone? These are the three clues: superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, medial and lateral. सगळ्यात पहिल्यांदा हेड वरती, कोरोनरी प्रोसेस समोर, olecranon प्रोसेस समोर, radial notch laterally, interosseous border laterally, olecranon styloid process medially and downward. That determines the side of this bone. Determination of a side of the bone is with the help of the features. So side determination is very easy. Then the clinical anatomy of this bone. Clinical anatomy, we have seen, it is better to see the clinical anatomy of this bone along with the radius. I have already told, if the radius, and many times radius and ulna gets fractured at a time, but there may be a fracture of a single bone. Either, mostly the radius is very common bone that it gets fractured. This is the stabilizing bone of the forearm. During the act of the supination and pronation, this bone remains as it. हे असंच राहतं, ऐसा आहे. हे कुठेही हलत नाही, फक्त radius, the lower end of the radius comes to the medial side in the pronation. It goes to the lateral side during the supination. Very simple. So ulna is called as a stabilizing bone of the forearm. Okay. Now the radio-ulnar diastasis. Supposed to be both the bones get fractured. If the shaft gets fractured, then there will be 4 fragments. 4 टुकड़े होतील. So one of the fragment, ulna, if ulna unites with the ulna, no matter. But if the head of the one of the fragment, खालचा तुकडा, the lower fragment of the radius, if it unite with the ulna, malunion, ulna, during the healing, then that is called as a radio-ulnar diastasis, and the patient is unable to do supination and pronation. Patient ला असं करताच येणार नाही. Obviously patient will complain. He cannot do pronation. असा ठेवला आणि हा तुकडा इथे जॉईन झाला, तर दॅट इज कॉल्ड ॲज अ रेडिओ-अल्नार डायस्टोसिस. आणि एक्सरे मध्ये लगेच कळतं की खालचा जो तुकडा आहे तो इथे अल्नाला जोडलेला आहे. दॅट इज व्हेरी इझी टू अंडरस्टँड or to know. there is a radio ulnar diastasis. So then the stabilizing bone of the forearm. See, if there is a over extension, suppose like this, if excessive over extension is there, if over extension is there, so in this olecranon process may get fractured. It comes out generally dislocation. Dislocation will happen, but if there is a over extension or a forceful extension is there beyond the 180 degree, then generally there is a dislocation. This olecranon process will come out from the olecranon fossa of the humerus, but this may get fractured occasionally. Very rarely this may get fractured. Then there may be chance of the fracture of this tip of the coronoid process. Very rarely this may, generally this gets dislocated. In the overextension it will get here and there, either to the lateral or to the medial side of the olecranon process. The shaft, the lower 1/3 and upper 2/3 of the shaft is very common site of the fracture common site of the fracture shaft is the upper 1/3 and lower 1/3, because this bone is very weak here, and radio ulnar diastasis. And firstly I have told this bone is the stabilizing bone of the forearm. So generally the radius in the forearm radius gets commonly fractured in the Pully's fracture and in the Smith's fracture. Smith's fracture, this is a history of a Smith's fracture in an in-stretched hand, and if there is a history of an outstretched hand, the lower fragment goes backward in the Pully's fracture and lower fragment comes forward in Smith's fracture. So these are some important clinical anatomy points regarding the ulna. If you don't understand, you revise the bone, see the bone, actual bone. Again revise. Firstly, olecranon process, 5 surfaces: superior surface, anterior surface, posterior surface, lateral surface, and medial surface, and anterior. 5 surfaces. Coronoid process, this is trochlear notch having 4 surfaces: superior surface, anterior inferior surface, lateral surface, and medial surface. Lateral surface bears a radial notch. This is interosseous border, this is anterior border, this is posterior border. This is anterior surface, this one is a medial surface, and this one is a posterior surface. Posterior surface, anterior surface, and medial surface. This is styloid process. There is a styloid process here inferiorly. Unfortunately, this bone doesn't have styloid process, it is broken, but here is a one pointed styloid process to the medial and inferior aspect of the lower end, and this one is the head, through which there is a groove in between the head and styloid process, through which the tendon of the extensor carpi ulnaris passes. So these are the features of the ulna, important features of the ulna. Now see the attachments. First of all, the attachments when you see the attachments, firstly you have to see the ligamental and membranous attachments of the bone. So this one is a line of demarcation. This one is a line of demarcation of the elbow joint, capsular ligament of the elbow joint, capsular ligament of the elbow joint. Head of the, there is a head of the radius here to the, an annular ligament is attached to the anterior and posterior aspect of this radial notch. Okay. Now on a medial aspect there is a ulnar collateral ligament of the elbow joint, ulnar collateral ligament, and to the interosseous border there is the attachment of the interosseous membrane in between the radius and ulna, okay. And here the ulna is just a supporting bone in the formation of a wrist joint. That's why this head of the ulna remains outside the articular disc of the wrist joint. So it doesn't play an important role in the formation of a wrist joint. It remains outside the articular disc. So it plays an important role in the formation of a elbow joint. So elbow joint is mainly due to the ulna, and wrist joint is head, the lower end of the radius articulates with the scaphoid and lunate to form the wrist joint. Okay, now the muscle attachment of the ulna, muscle attachment of the ulna. First of all, this one is the insertion of the brachialis. Insertion of the brachialis. This area just below to the radial tuberosity. Then to the, see here, there is a, here from the anterior aspect, here is the, see, you may compare with your attachments with the book. Here is the insertion of the supinator, insertion of the supinator here. Then the three important muscles, they are they get originated: flexor digitorum superficialis, then the pronator teres, the ulnar head. Pronator teres also gets originated from the humerus, but this ulnar head, when it is inserted here, the ulnar head of the pronator teres, through that head, that median nerve passes, ulnar and radial head of the pronator teres, that humeral head and ulnar head, the median nerve passes, and here is the pronator teres. Below the pronator teres, flexor digitorum superficialis. Above that, flexor digitorum superficialis, pronator teres, and flexor pollicis longus. And anteriorly, then here is the, we have seen the supinator. All the anterior aspect, anterior surface of or anterior aspect of the whole of the upper two-third gives origin to the flexor digitorum profundus. Flexor digitorum profundus is supplied by partly by ulnar nerve and partly by median nerve. Flexor digitorum profundus. Then below we have seen a quadrangular muscle, the pronator quadratus, which gets originated from the lower end of the radius and is inserted, originated from the ulna and is inserted on the radius. Pronator quadratus, a quadrangular muscle. Then pronator quadratus. Then to the posterior aspect. First of all, here at the tip of the olecranon process, there is a insertion of the muscle tricep. Tricep muscle, you know, tricep has three heads: medial head, lateral head, and long head. This tricep is inserted on the superior surface of the olecranon process, and from the on the posterior aspect there is a insertion of the muscle anconeus. This one is an anconeus, very membranous, thin muscle. It is inserted on the posterior aspect, just below to the olecranon process of the ulna. Then there are three muscles on a posterior surface. On a posterior surface of the ulna. On a posterior surface of the ulna to this side. First one is the abductor pollicis longus, origin of abductor pollicis longus. Then the extensor pollicis longus, abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis longus, and extensor indicis for the index finger. These three muscles are originated from the posterior surface of the ulna. No muscle gets originated or inserted to the lower end of the ulna. Only the posterior surface. I again revise: tricep, anconeus, brachialis, supinator, then the from the posterior abductor pollicis longus, then the extensor pollicis brevis longus, and extensor indicis. Three muscles from the shaft. And here is the insertion of the supinator, insertion of the brachialis, insertion of the, this is the tricep, then brachialis, then supinator, then the anconeus. These are the muscles. They get either inserted, and most of the origins are from the back of the ulna. They are the muscles that get originated from the shaft, and most of the muscles, all the muscles are inserted on the upper end, and all the muscles are originated from the shaft of the ulna. We have already discussed the features, clinical anatomy, features of upper end, clinical upper end, shaft and lower end, clinical anatomy, and the site determination and attachments of the ulna in detail. So in your practice life, generally see, प्रत्यक्ष प्रॅक्टिस जीवनामध्ये दोन्ही बोन फ्रॅक्चर होतात. तुम्हाला एक्सरे सुद्धा ओळखता आला पाहिजे. फ्रॅक्चर, वन ऑफ द फ्रॅक्चर, दे जनरली दिस बोन गेट्स डिसलोकेटेड. हा सायकलवरून पडल्या मुलांचा हा डिसलोकेट होतो, बाहेर येतो, आल्याकडून प्रोसेस कम्स आउट. दॅट इज डिसलोकेशन ऑफ द. अँड सी समभुज, क्वाड्रिलॅटरल triangle. The 2 points are the epicondyles of the humerus, and apex of the triangle is olecranon process. If that triangle is not there in the X-ray, if they come in one line, then there is some dislocation. Either above, if it goes upward, if they come in one line, definitely there is a dislocation of the olecranon process. Then styloid process is subcutaneous. You can see your styloid process of your ulna. This is styloid process, surface marking of the ulna, and this is olecranon process of the ulna. You can palpate olecranon process of your ulna by bending. If it comes out, and it can be easily found out, then you can easily test the medial condyle, lateral condyle of the humerus, and medial condyle of the humerus is easy to detect, or to do the surface marking of the medial condyle and lateral condyle, and you can detect the olecranon process of the ulna. If it comes out, if that triangle is not there, that means definitely there is some dislocation of the upper end of the ulna. Then the shaft may get fractured. Along with the radius, and that leads, sometimes the home treatment may leads to the malunion or misunion. रेडियसचा एक तुकडा अल्ना बरोबर जोडला जातो. पेशंट महिनाभर असाच असतो, आणि 1 महिन्यानंतर पेशंटला सांगितलं हालचाल करायला किंवा 20-21 दिवसानंतर, the patient is unable to do. पेशंटला pronation आणि supination, he is not able to do pronation and supination. So definitely there is a fault in the healing, and if you make the X-ray, you may easily come to diagnosis that there is a radio ulnar diastasis. याचा तुकडा त्याला जोडला गेला. One of the piece of the either radius or ulna unite to the radius or to the ulna. That is radio ulnar diastasis. These are the important features, attachments and clinical anatomy, site determination, muscle attachment of the ulna.